Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I'm grateful. I'm glad that you're going to be able to hear from some distinguished members of the Senate, and then me as well. And it's good to speak to you today, and thank you for that kind introduction. So this is very timely, and I'm glad you're here for a few moments. And I wanted to take a moment to share with you my views and then some ideas about how we can address it. So my views are in everything in life are deeply shaped by my personal experience growing up and that of my parents. My parents came here in 1956. They came to a country where you could make it to the middle class despite the fact that you didn't have a lot of advanced education. So neither of my parents really finished school. My dad, when he was 9 years old, his mother passed away. He went to work in Havana as a kid at 9 years of age, and he basically worked for the next 70 years. My mom didn't have to go to work till a little bit later in life, maybe 15 or 16, but she too never got the sort of formal education at the high school level, in fact, I would guess my mom probably had the equivalent of an 8th or 9th grade education, and my dad much less than that. Despite that, they were able to come to America and they were able to find jobs that paid them enough money to make it to the middle class and to give us a chance at an even better life. And when I talk about that story, I do as much as anything else to remind myself and everybody else of the true nature of the American dream. The American dream is not about how much money you make. The American dream is not about becoming rich and famous. That may be some people's American dream, but that is not the American dream. The American dream is about things that are a lot more simpler and fundamental, about the ability to raise your family with safety and security, to worship freely, to not be discriminated against because of the circumstances of your birth, and to be able to leave your children better off than yourself. That's the true essence of the American dream. The cornerstone of that, or an important part of that, is stability, financial stability. So if you go back 100 years to the Industrial Revolution, that helped create this massive, powerful, truly exceptional American middle class. Why? Because for the first time in human history, like the era that my grandfather grew up in, your ability to make a living did not depend on whether you were physically able to do farm work. You could now make it to the middle class operating a machine or building things with your hands. Interestingly enough, my grandfather was one of multiple children born in the countryside of Cuba, basically the equivalent of sharecroppers. He was stricken with polio when he was 6 years old, or much young. I don't exactly know the age, but very young. And so he wasn't able to work on the farm. So what did they do? They actually sent him to school in the hopes that he would be, and he learned Morse code and being a telegraph operator, and it allowed him to make a living for some period of time, but mostly a life of economic instability, because as a disabled man in Cuba, he struggled to provide for his family. The Industrial Revolution changed that in America because it empowered more people than ever to be able to make it to the middle class through these jobs. And that's how we built this country into an exceptional one. The cornerstone of that being that financial security that comes from this broad and stable American middle class. The problem now is that over the last 20 years, we've transitioned from an industrial to a post-industrial economy. And that's just a fact. Information technology, innovation and automation, outsourcing, globalism, these are all real factors. And it's created a tremendous amount of insecurity in America because those jobs that used to be there, that allowed you, even with limited education, to make it to the middle class, those jobs are being outsourced, and they're being replaced, and they're turning into machines. My mom used to be a cashier at a Kmart, at a hotel. Well, a lot of the cashiers now are machines, right? If you have 10 items or less, you scan them. I sometimes go through with 11. But my point is that I point to that as an example of the kind of transformation that we're going through as an economy. And the result is this emerging opportunity gap that you find in America today. Just yesterday, Pew, yesterday or the day before, came out with a study that found that the gap between people that have higher education and those who do not is as wide as it's been in over 50 years. So here's the fundamental challenge that we have. And by the way, the economic downturn has hurt people. There's no doubt about it. The Great Recession was a major factor in people's lives. But all it really did was accelerate changes that were coming anyway. So now we're facing this situation where in the 21st century, there are new jobs that actually pay more than the jobs of the 20th century used to pay, but they require a higher level of education and skill acquisition than ever before. And the challenge that we're running into is that the people who could most benefit from it are the ones least likely to access that education. Why? Because of cost, but also because of flexibility. So for example, if you are a 31-year-old single mother with 2 children, what does your day look like? Here's what your day looks like. You wake up at 6 in the morning and you make them breakfast. You take them, if you have a car or on public transportation, to school. You drop them off, then you go work for 8 or 9 hours. Then you rush back to pick them up before the aftercare closes, which, by the way, the child care has gotten more and more expensive. You bring them home, you feed them dinner, you make sure they're doing their homework, you put them to bed. It's now 10 o'clock. Maybe you have an hour for yourself. You go to sleep, you wake up the next morning, you do it all over again. That person might be stuck in a job that only pays $25,000, $26,000 a year. The only way they're ever going to get a raise is if they can acquire the skills for a job that pays more. But how are you going to do that when you have to work 8 hours and raise a family? And the bottom line is that our 20th century education system is unfortunately not designed for people in those circumstances. So what we need to do is to continue to innovate our higher education system so that we can provide skill acquisition, yes, to 18-year-olds that graduated high school, but also to 31-year-olds that are trying to empower themselves to acquire the new middle-class jobs of the 21st century. And that's where I think community colleges play such a critical role. Why? One, because they're a lot more accessible. You have more campuses. Your programs are not just built for traditional student profiles. They're also built for people that can go to school on Saturdays and study online and who need to get a degree quicker. Second, because the costs, quite frankly, are lower than they would be in the traditional four-year system. That's why I've always supported expanding the ability of community colleges to offer some four-year degree programs, because the program is more accessible. So you are an important part of it. Here's another part of it. You are an important bridge between the jobs that are being created and the people who need jobs. You're closer to the business community, and you are quicker to adapt in the ability to go to the business community in a geographic location and say, okay, you guys are creating more demand for employers that can do X. And we're going to create a program working with you to make that possible. You can do that a lot quicker at the community college level than you can at the four-year university. Now, I'm not here to beat up on four-year universities. I actually teach in one at Florida International University. They will always be an important part of the menu. But we need to add options to this menu, because not everyone can drop everything and go to school for 4 years in a college town. Not everyone can say, for the next 4 years, I'm going to become a full-time student. Not everyone can do that. And by the way, not everyone can afford it. I went to school. My parents never made enough money to save. And truth be told, my fault. I was not a good enough high school student to get academic scholarships. So how did I go? On Pell Grants, work study, summer jobs, and student loans. When I finished don't clap for the student loans. When I graduated, forget about when I graduated. When I swore in as a senator of the United States in 2011, I owed over $100,000 in student loans. Now, I paid that off through the proceeds of my book, now available on paperback, if you're interested. But when I graduated, it was for at least the first 5 or 6 years, maybe longer. It was the single biggest expenditure that I had. And I understand that there has to be, providing higher education costs money. But at some point, affordability and quality have to meet, and that's a real challenge. Beyond that, I truly believe, and I think you can be innovators in this as well, we have to figure out ways to package learning, not just classroom instruction, but learning, into employable degree programs and certificate programs. One example, home health aides. You hear a lot about the gap in earning between women and men. One of the reasons why that's happening is because many women find themselves in caregiver-type professions that just don't pay a lot of money. So a home health aide is an example. My mom uses home health. A home health aide, their reimbursement, their pay is largely based on the reimbursement model for that kind of care. The truth is those jobs are never going to pay $50,000 a year. But what if we could create nursing programs across this country, primarily at your level, because you're the only ones with the flexibility to do this, that say, if you're a home health aide, you're going to get credit hours for the hands-on experience that you're gaining by dealing with patients in a clinical setting. And that's going to count towards a degree in becoming a nurse practitioner or a nurse or an anesthesiologist assistant or a pharmacy tech or whatever it may be. That's the kind of empowering programs that we need to be creative about. What about if I come to you and say, look, here's what I've done for the last 10 years. This is my work experience. These are subjects that I've mastered on my own. I'm willing to test into credit for that. Here are courses I've taken online from 5 different institutions across the country. And I'm willing to sit for 30 or 40 course credits in your classrooms. Maybe I'll go to the downtown campus for this one, and the north campus for that one, and the rural campus for that one, depending on what my schedule looks like, and help package all of that together into certified degree programs. What about more partnerships with high schools so that we can graduate kids job ready? So for example, why aren't more high school graduates graduating with a high school diploma on the one hand and an industry certification in another, as a BMW technician, as an airplane mechanic? More high school students should be given the opportunity to say, look, I don't want to go to a four-year university, but I want to fix things with my hands, or I want to be a welder. And I see the field that can exist for community colleges to partner with high schools to create those innovative programs, and for Pell Grant to pay for it. That's the other point that frustrates me. So right now, how many students are being remediated across this country? So a ton, right? So here's the irony. Pell Grant will not help pay for programs that require you not to be remediated. But once you turn 18, it will pay for you to be remediated. What if we just said, let's just make that money available at the front end for you to receive the career education? Let them go to school for 3 hours in the morning to the high school, and then let them go to the local community college or a business and take courses so that when they graduate, they have in their hands a diploma and they are certified to go to work. There is a program in Miami-Dade County doing that right now in partnership with a car dealership. So kids there are going to high school for 3 hours in the morning, and then they go to the body shop. When they graduate, they are certified BMW technicians, making between $35,000 and $40,000 a year. Last year, by the way, they had their first female graduate, who this year will be certified as a painter in the body shop and will add $10,000 to her paycheck as a result. You can be leaders, and in many communities, you are leaders in this. But this is not about, we talk about this as education. And when we talk about education, we talk about it like eating your vegetables, like it's good for you. This is not about education. This is more than about education. This is about our identity as a nation. Why I say that to you is the following. We pride ourselves as one of the few places in human history where the circumstances of your birth do not trap you. It doesn't matter if your parents weren't connected politically, or they weren't rich, or they weren't famous. We pride ourselves as a society where no matter where you come from, left or right, we believe that it is unfair that someone should be limited by whatever it is their parents did. We believe every single human being has a God-given right to be and fulfill their complete potential, however they may define that. The problem is that there are now countries that are more mobile than us. There are now societies on this planet where the circumstances of your birth matter less than they do here. And that is completely unacceptable. Why? Because it threatens our identity. It threatens what makes us different and special. And in the 21st century, that's never mattered more. It's interesting, the Olympics are on right now. And we're watching, right? Because we want Americans to win gold medals in every event. We're rooting for our team. Well, when it comes to the economy, the Olympics are every day. And they'll be every day for the next 100 years and beyond. And you have more companies participating in the economic Olympics than ever before. And our competition isn't just people living in Mississippi or Alabama. It's people living in India and China and Japan and Korea. And we have always been good when it comes to competition. And that's what we're involved in right now. Who's going to innovate the next great ideas? Who's going to produce the workforce to build those innovations? Who's going to have the workforce to design it, to deliver it, to service it? That's the competition that we are in. And in the 21st century, it will depend entirely on the skills and the knowledge that you've acquired. And we will not be able to deal with the 21st century problem using a 20th century model. We cannot. And this is not a partisan issue. It doesn't need to be, it shouldn't be, and it can't be. This is a national priority of the highest order, and one that we have to confront, because if we fail to confront it, what we will slowly but surely become is a stratified economy divided between haves and have-nots, between those who have higher education and those who do not have higher education. You're already seeing the outlines of it. You're already seeing the social pressures that it places on our country. You're already seeing the divisions that's creating in American politics. And I understand there's always a room for disagreement, and there always will be, on the view of how we can incentivize our economy to grow, on the proper role of government, on what we need to do about our national debt. But I, for one, am tired of being part of a process where I'm always fighting with my fellow Americans, when in fact the rest of the world is moving ahead. The truth is that we are all in this. On this issue, on this economic competition issue, we are all in it together. If so many Americans continue to be left behind because they do not have access to the skills they need, we will all pay the price for that. Every single one of us. None of us will be immune from it. No matter how high the walls are in your gated communities, no matter how far away from the city you may want to move, You will not be able to escape the consequences of that, because your business won't be able to find workforce, because your products won't have an economy that can buy this stuff, because we'll fall behind in the race for innovation. On the other hand, I don't think there's a people on earth better prepared to take advantage of the 21st century than we are, because by nature we're go-getters. We're the descendants of go-getters, every single one of us. Every American can track their lineage back to somebody who refused to accept the ways of the old world. They came here as immigrants, they overcame slavery. Whatever your background may be, every single one of us is the descendant of people who went out and made a new life for themselves. We are innovators by nature. We are creative by nature as Americans. It is part of our national identity. And this is an era, an economic era, that will incentivize innovation and creativity and competition. And we are better at that than anyone in the world. We still are. If only we had a few policies in place that would unleash that in 21st century ways. This is a fundamental challenge. The federal government has a role to play in how it pays for these things. But so do you, and so does our communities, in recognizing what it is that's causing this instability and insecurity and what it will take to fix it. And the sooner we do it, the better we will all be. So thank you for what you do and for this chance to speak to you. I appreciate it very much.